My name is Bonnie B, and you are watching The Power of Perseverance. Thank you so much for making time to have this conversation with me. Brad Kearns, you are a New York Times bestselling author, Guinness World Record setting professional speed golfer, which I never even heard of till I read your bio, and co-author with Mark Sissions on several books, including The Keto Reset Diet, which I have read, excellent book, and The Keto Reset Instant Pot Cookbook. So you host also your podcast, Get Over Yourself. I love that because you're eliminating that ego right off the top. Just get over it. What is this? And you're a 12-year member of the U.S. national team and a former professional triathlete. Your passion appears to lie in exploring and sharing cutting-edge insights into achieving peak performance in fitness and nutrition, life and relationships. So thank you for being here to share with the audience and getting to know you more.
Thanks a lot, Bonnie. Ready to rock and roll. We're going to have some fun here.
Oh, I love it. So when we were emailing back and forth, I appreciate so much when people are very direct and authentic and open. And, you know, we had exchanged a few things about experience, and I had mentioned my divorce casually, and you had said, congratulations, and offered a very different perspective about it. And I went, you know what? I love that because it doesn't always mean it's a bad thing. And so then I'm researching a little bit more. I'm like, what hard thing did this man go through? And I read your 11.5-week career in the accounting world. And that made me laugh because seriously, you graduate, you go to all these things. The expectation is you enter into this corporate world, which this is my first corporate job in 18 years because I've been an entrepreneur doing all things in health and wellness. So I come over to the other side, right? And the second you stepped out of that office to pursue your goals, I could imagine you probably didn't even have an idea you were going to end up here, did you?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. You bring up that memory, that great tragedy that occurred in my life. As I tell people when I'm doing a live audience, I say, I was an athlete at UC Santa Barbara. It was the most beautiful campus in America. Ride your bike to school, go to the beach. You can go to class if the surf's not up. But it was such a beautiful life. And then the tragedy that occurred was I graduated and had to put on a suit and tie and get stuck in Los Angeles rush hour traffic back and forth every day, hour and 15 minutes to this job, which was supposed to be, a prestigious job in Stepping Stone. It was the world's largest accounting firm. And, the first day I knew I'd made a horrible mistake, and I was looking around at all the, excited faces going through orientation and looking at the generous retirement package that the firm offered. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be, on the beach in Santa Barbara, enjoying the sun and riding my bike through the mountains and, doing the sporting things that I love. So yeah, I survived for 11.5 weeks. And for some people, their destiny feels right. And we hear a lot of this chatter now directed at young people through, the internet, social media, saying, pursue your passion and do this, don't settle. And it sort of gets confusing at times because it's easy to kind of turn this into, turn life into a whimsical series of, privileges that, if you're not feeling it at your job, you can leave after a month and pick up another job. But for me, the sensations in my body and in my heart were so powerful that I knew something was off and that I had to do something about it. And so, when I talk to like young aspiring athletes or whatever their position is, these are things that you can't really fake. You're sort of forced to or compelled to do what you're meant to do in life. John D. Martini, the great author, motivational speaker, he says, he calls it your inspired purpose. And the definition is, what do you do every day spontaneously that requires no motivation and brings you joy and makes a contribution to the larger good of society. So if you raise your hand and say, I like video gaming and ordering pizza on DoorDash, that doesn't quite qualify. But there's that thing that you do that requires no motivation, I think is a really beautiful definition. And when I think about all the books that I've written, because that's been my main career thrust among doing a bunch of other things, I've written, something like 22 books in a row now, nonstop. Like I'm always working on a book, and then when the book's done, we start working on a second book. And so these are things that I'm called to do. Of course, they require motivation and discipline and focus and structuring and scheduling, but it's sort of a natural thing for me to do, and I feel like that's something that makes me good at it, competent at it, and also enjoy the process along the way. But when you ask the question, like that day that I stepped out of the accounting firm after my exit interview, I felt like a free man that had just been released from jail, and my immediate obsession was to try to become a professional triathlete. That's what I told the guy at my exit interview, and he scoffed and he said, "You know what? You can have your job back here anytime you want." And I was so touched that he made that offer to me. He like looked me in the eye, and go, "Seriously, come back anytime." Because one, I thought he probably knew I was gonna flop after a certain period of time, and two, I realized later they'd spent so much money training me that of course they were going to offer me my job back anytime, because six
They
of
didn't
those
want
11 weeks they were
to.
paying me to get lined up for their corporate system. But anyway, that was the most tremendous source of motivation when I turned the corner and started training full time to be a triathlete, that I loved what I was doing. I felt like it was my calling and my destiny. And so I didn't have that wavering focus and wavering motivation that a lot of people might be able to relate to in the career realm, especially where you're in you're in law school, or you're in a training program to be a financial analyst, and you're not sure if it's going to work, or you're not sure you're going to like it. All those things are signs of real trouble, because it's a competitive world, and we have to be totally dedicated to our goals, and also feel right about the goals, not just slave away because someone told us that working 12 hours a day is going to succeed. That's just not how it works.
So in that moment when you're getting ready to walk out the door and you talk about this feeling of pins and needles, because, I'd like to describe it like the feeling of following your heart. Um, I think people get stuck on fear. Do I have enough money? Where's my savings? How am I going to make? All of those things run through your head. I mean, were you in a position you could do that, or it was just like all out go?
Yeah, great question. I mean, if we just sit back and reflect on that question for a while, that's a big one, because, of course, it comes up 73 times in adult life, right? And so I don't think you can be frivolous about these things, and you have to absorb the real life consequences of what you're doing. And I'm still working on that. I'm still trying to grow up at the age of 59, and
Do we ever really
consider
grow
whether
up?
like all this effort that I'm putting forth in this direction, does it make
Yeah.
economic sense? Is it the best use and the highest expression of my talents? And those are real life questions that you're compelled to answer if you want to make things right. And it's easy to get off track sometimes, I think, because we can get so distracted by, for example, nonstop hyper connectivity and communication, and answering our chats and our emails and our text messages. You kind of forget that bigger purpose. And I think it's a good idea to wake up every day and say, am I still on the path? Am I still doing what I need to do at all times to be the best I can be? And yeah, it's tough. It's easy to get punched around and thrown off that.
On your website, and for all those listening, it's bradkearns.com. I highly recommend you take a visit and look at all of his amazing resources. So much education, and you also offer education around male supplements, which I absolutely love. I think it should be more talked about because we all have our differences, right, within our bodies, male and female. So I like that you talk about that. But you give this timeline of your life, and starting from a young age, that the teacher is telling you that you just have this incredible energy, but you're distracting, but in a good way. And I like that you turn that into fun in your bio. It just tells me your perspective of life is no matter what, you're going to find the positive outcome of whatever comes your way. So that being said, after you're leaving the firm and you're doing triathlon stuff, I have to ask, like, what brought you into speed golf? And how do you even say, I'm going to set a world record for whatever this is? That was pretty fun. to read.
Yeah, for people who haven't heard of it, which most people haven't, it's a really cool fringe underground sport, a twist on the traditional sport of golf that brings this fitness element to it, and it also brings sort of a Zen element to it because, interestingly, what you do is you run around the course at the best speed that you can, and you try to score well. So in the tournament setting, speed golf counts your strokes and your minutes together to deliver a total speed golf score. So the best round I've ever had is a 125. Golfers know that's a pretty terrible score, but what that represented was I shot 78 in 47 minutes running on a traditional 18-hole championship course, 6,000-yard course. So I'm running pretty fast in between each shot. I'm only carrying a few clubs because you can't lug the big old golf bag
Yeah.
when you're playing speed golf, but it's not running around and hockey pucking the ball into the hole because each stroke counts for a point, as does each minute. And so you have to play good golf. You have to hit the ball straight, or your time is going to be slower running into the bushes to hit all your terrible shots. So it's a graceful blend of fitness and athleticism and traditional golf scoring. And what a lot of participants find is when they get out of that over analytical mindset that golfers suffer from, where they can't decide what club to choose out of the 14 of choices in their bag, and they got to get the exact yardage because they watch the pros on TV and the announcer says it's 154 yards with a 7-mile-per-hour side wind. Tiger's going to choose the 9-iron, and it's like, come on, dude, you can't even hit the ball on the middle of the club, so it doesn't even matter what club you're using. So when speed golfers get into this groove, it's a Zen-like state where you're just reacting to what's around you. You're totally in the moment. You run up to the ball. You don't even have time to catch your breath, and you look at the target and you take a swing. And that is, and there's golf experts that will validate this, that's the best possible mindset that you can have, is a mind free of minor technique thoughts and tips. All you need to do is look at the target and swing the club and rely on your natural athletic ability. So it's a really fun sport in that sense. And I've been doing it since I was a kid. Really, it was just some sort of a little side note to playing traditional golf, which has been my whole family's sport, kind of except for me. You know, my father was a champion golfer, my brother the same, and I got into the endurance scene when I was in high school. But, you know, golf was always there in the background as a fun thing. So what better to do as an endurance athlete than put endurance and golf together?
Well, you've had a lot of accomplishments in running and track and field and with the high jump, in accomplishing these things. Through what I have learned through learning more about you is it doesn't matter the age you're doing these things. It's your mindset and your ability to, what I feel like you just described in a way, is getting in a sense of flow. And that kind of Zen really puts you in a place to be present in the moment. And it sounds like throughout your career, it's almost a practice for you to get that, to be good at these events. Would that be a good way to phrase that?
Yeah, and interestingly, you know, we talked a little bit about, you know, where I went after the accounting firm was I was a professional triathlete. I was on the circuit for 9 years. At my very best, I was U.S. national champion, number 3 in the world ranking. So I had that run as a young person of being able to pursue my athletic dream, and it was really wonderful from ages 20 to 30. But then over the years, I come to these important reflections, and one of them is that extreme endurance training like we had to do to be competitive on the triathlon circuit, where you're trying to get really good at swimming, bicycling, and running, and competing in these races that last from 2 hours up to 9 hours. It's really, really tough on the body, on the immune system, on the hormonal system. And you're constantly kind of on the edge of fatigue, illness, and breakdown just to try to be a top athlete and take 30 seconds off your time so that you can do the Olympic distance course in an hour 47 instead of an hour 47 and a half. And it was a pretty all consuming, all encompassing, dedication for those years that I was racing at my best, but it's not something that's aligned with general health nor longevity. And so I had to evolve my competitive goals over the ensuing decades so that I could try to maintain my health and my hormonal status and my energy and function in real life and raise kids and do all kinds of things that didn't entail just pedaling my bicycle all day long over giant mountains and then jumping in the swimming pool and going back and forth after that and waking up the next day and running and going and traveling all around. So I think I talk to endurance athletes a lot. We have an upcoming book that's sort of directing this message to the extremely popular endurance running scene, that this stuff might be honorable and worthy to pursue these challenging goals to balance the comforts and convenience of modern life, but it's not necessarily aligned with health, and in many cases can absolutely destroy your health when you do extreme endurance training for years and years without a proper approach, which most people are not implementing the proper approach. They're doing it in a manner that's too stressful for the body and the hormones and the digestive system, and things just fall apart when you think you're doing yourself a solid and you're training for the marathon with the rest of the group in your community. So my message is, we have to align our fitness pursuits with our genetic expectations for health. And we go to evolutionary biology and the scientific research showing that humans are designed to move around a lot throughout the day. So we have this baseline of frequent movement. Walking would be the centerpiece, of course, of how humans move, but all kinds of other things count, like your morning 7-minute Tai Chi session in the backyard, or you go to a traditional yoga class or Pilates class, you go on a hike on the weekend, you go on a cardio machine at the gym and exercise at an appropriate heart rate. So it's not an exhausting workout, but it's an energizing workout. So you have this foundation of basic everyday low-level movement, but then also extremely important for health, anti-aging, longevity, disease prevention is to push the body with brief, explosive, high-intensity exercise. And that's an area where a lot of people fall short. They go and they walk around the park every day with their dog, or they go to the gym and they go on the stair climber for 45 minutes and then they go home and they leave the weights to the bros because they're intimidated. They don't know where the pin goes and how to work the things. But we need to preserve functional muscle strength throughout life. And many of the world's leading researchers and experts now are contending that this is the single most important longevity attribute, better than anything that you can find on a blood test or in a doctor's office. So congratulations if your blood work looks okay. Everything looks normal. And remember, when we say the word normal now, we're talking about the fattest and least fit population in the history, in recorded history of humanity.
Yeah,
So
it's
don't
average.
strive to be normal. I want to see
No.
everything superior 95 percentile. But anyway, that brief, explosive, high intensity exercise, preserving especially the fast twitch muscle fiber, which is the stuff that we lose when we age, that is super, super important for everyone, from geriatric person who have a great potential to add muscle mass faster than any other age group. So grandma can make better progress in the gym than my 26-year-old son, who's already got a ton of muscle mass and is trying to get 10% stronger. It's not going to be easy, but people who are coming from sedentary or coming from a cardio-based exercise program, they can make fantastic gains, especially with body composition and some of those frustrations where you're training for your marathon, you cross the finish line, you got your medal, and you have a lot of Ben and Jerry's cartons that to show for it over the previous 6 months, and you don't lose weight even with all those miles and miles of running. That's because the body doesn't really respond to endurance training by dropping excess body fat. Again, this is research validated that you need to push yourself hard and do brief, high-intensity efforts. People call it high-intensity interval training or variations of that, just even short, explosive, all-out sprints where you're pedaling the bicycle for 10 seconds and resting for a minute or two and then doing it again as hard as you can. Those type of workouts have a vastly better return on investment for fat reduction than slogging along for 6 miles or 10 miles or 26 miles.
Dr. Gabrielle Lyons talks about this too. The muscle is our longevity organ. So I love that you're bringing this up. And just being as long as in fitness, as long as you have, the evolution of how the gym and weight training has become is really cool. And then nutrition. huge. Hydration, electrolytes, proteins, carbohydrates. I would imagine when you first started out, nutrition wasn't as prevalent. What really was that like when you started racing versus what you're doing now, which is based on more longevity and, you know, more wellness? But
Yeah,
give us a perspective of how that evolved for you.
that's interesting, Bonnie. I mean, nutrition has always been there as like this huge category, and the best-selling books have come in a string for decades, right? It's
Yeah.
just how we've evolved kind of the message and what the conventional thinking was. And I think the most glaring example is, the government recommendations and the major, the major pillars of conventional wisdom have gone through this, very slowly, about 20 or 30 years behind the emerging science. We've been told all these stories. Like one of them was um, the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity, or the cholesterol model of heart disease. And now these things are now strongly refuted by tons and tons of mounting research over recent decades. But I still talk to people virtually every week where they go to the doctor and they say, "Yeah, your cholesterol's a little high. Um, I'm thinking of putting you on a statin, but we'll check you in 6 months. It's right there. Be careful with that, and don't eat so much meat or eggs." That message is 40 to 50 years outdated. However, it
Yeah.
was the gold standard 40 to 50 years ago, which is possibly when that person went to medical school, or is just, not aware of emerging nutrition research. And there's no reason that a medical doctor should be. Remember, the doctors are highly specialized and they're trained to take care of disease. They're not diet or nutrition experts, but somehow they've backpedaled into this position where they are making diet recommendations and telling people not to eat eggs. And then, as we know from the emerging primal
I've
paleo
heard that
ancestral
one.
health movement, that's now 20 plus years old, if you want to go back to the first books that emerged on this ancestral health model. Humans have been raiding the stashes of eggs of other animals for 2.5 million years, and it's one of the most nutrient dense foods on planet Earth. We have major studies like the Framingham study, probably the single largest and longest study on lifestyle affecting health, with sweeping conclusions like the dietary cholesterol level has no impact on blood cholesterol level. And so then another Framingham study conclusion that blood cholesterol level has no correlation with heart disease risk. Wait, what? What are you talking about? And if your doctor's not on board and shakes their head, you need to find another doctor, or someone who can give you expert nutritional advice that's more sensible and not stuck in these flawed science, flawed research. You probably know Dr. Kate Shanahan. I just had her on my
Yeah.
podcast to talk about her new book, discussing the dangers of refined, high polyunsaturated industrial seed oils. And these are the things that the government started pushing on us back in the 60s to switch from butter to margarine, so you don't get a heart attack from all that nasty saturated fat and butter. Instead, why
Which
don't
we
you
find
take
out is
this
so good.
chemically altered product that is now confirmed to be directly associated with hundreds of thousands of deaths every year due to heart disease, cancer, and so forth. So we need to get our head out of the sand if we're still stuck in flawed conventional wisdom. But as I go on this really controversial subject, I want to be careful, because next week you might have a wonderful guest on who's touting the benefits of a vegan plant-based diet and all the research showing that it's so much better. And look at all these great things have happened. I have good friends that are, conveying a message that quite distinct from, some of the stuff that we've written about in our books and in the ancestral health scene. So I need everyone to backpedal a few steps, take a deep breath. Like you said, I don't know if you hit record button, but you said, "Hey, before we start, let's take a deep breath and get present." I'm like, yes, let's do it again right now on the subject of diet, because what we've gotten into is huge controversy and yelling and shouting and arguing and touting these niche diets to the extent that people become confused and discouraged because maybe they're too extreme, or they hear a counter opinion. So I want everybody to take a few steps back and acknowledge that the single entry gateway to optimizing your diet is to eliminate processed foods. And I don't think that you're going to have another guest on next week that's going to challenge this blowhard Brad Kearns saying that we shouldn't have heavily processed nutrient deficient foods. So if we can do that, which is a big challenge, it's going to require a lot of habit modification and changing your shopping habits. That's when we can sit down and further converse about the wonderful, amazing benefits of the ketogenic diet and the ketone supplements and all the things that people are going using to try to get from level 7 to level 8 or level 9 to level 10 or what have you. But most of the time, when I talk to people that are not living and breathing this stuff like you and I are, and perhaps some other listeners, we have to stop at square one. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 because I go over to your house and there's all this crap in your pantry. So why are you asking me about the pros and cons of strict carnivore versus carnivore fruit and honey modification, or what ketone readings are better? Is it between 0.5 and 2, or should you be 2 to 4? I'm like, I don't know, and I don't care, because I'm looking at all this crap in your pantry after we finished our conversation in the other room. So everybody settle down and take that huge first step to clean up your act. And if you do it in a certain direction that seems to work for you, and it's vegan, plant-based, and you like your lentil soup and your brown rice, and you fast until 1 p.m. every day, and you're coming along and you've made a health improvement, that's great. And then you have other people on the other side that are going and eating salmon, eggs, and steak for 30 days, and everything clears up for them, and they have autoimmune and inflammatory conditions that are improving. All these people are winning because they've cleaned up their act to that first step. Then we can talk about further optimization. And I'm sure you've done a fair amount of that on your show. And I've done a lot of talking and writing about this subject. As you mentioned at the outset, the ketogenic diet is quite extreme and niched and nuanced, and it's had great results for many people. But I've also seen people under the guise of keto eating a bunch of junk in a package that has the word keto on it. And so, we just have to get more sensible rather than extreme and faction building.
What I heard you say in a lot of those parts is basically you've got sections of niche diets, which are metabolic pathways to start your body into a way of healing itself. And as you grow and evolve through learning about your foods and nutrition, coming off of processed foods, the best way for you really to evolve is to take on the whole food approach diet and evolve even more. And I think as people start to awaken and to understand that, especially going back to the ancestral way, they're getting more comfortable with it. But we get planted these seeds from the government and from what it's supposed to look like. I remember growing up with the food pyramid, and grain was the base, and no eggs and no dairy. And luckily, I had a little more holistic mother. We didn't go to the doctor unless we were dying. So it was like, here, you're having echinacea, you're having elderberry, so I wasn't, that's really weird to me personally. But when you're talking about perspectives, I'm just thinking, I get it, because at first people don't know what they don't know until you know differently, which brings me to mindset. I think you talk a lot about that throughout your books too, evolving that mindset through positivity and change. Was there a time though, as you were going through your own personal evolution, that you questioned and you were doubted what you were doing?
Oh, sure. I think especially in that athletic realm, that was the start of my career. It's the results are so graphic and intense, and you're so exposed, like perhaps unlike any other career. Maybe if you're running for office and you win or you lose, it's pretty much that's pretty much the goal. And the same with in athletics. I can't talk my way into a promotion on the world rankings. I have to race my way in there. And so I was kind of compelled to go face to face with my demons, peculiarities, imperfections, self-doubt, all those kind of things. And, looking in the mirror and having to reckon with these because you performed, worse than you'd hoped, I think is a huge opportunity for personal growth. I mean, there is no excuse that you can spit out of your mouth that's going to cover for the time and the place that's sitting here on a form giving you the complete exposure. So over time, what happens when you're in a really intense career environment like that is, like you hinted earlier, you're forced to get over yourself. And I mean that in the most positive way, where you're allowed to kind of compete with great intensity and great passion and take what you're doing very seriously, but at the same time, release the attachment of your self-esteem to the outcome of what you're doing. It works really well as a racer, and I'll also tell you it works really well as a parent, because the parent has to do the best job that they can, and then they have to let go and let the kid live their life. And I think in today's age of, what do they used to call them, helicopter parent, then they called it lawnmower parent, and then I heard
Different
another
labels.
thing.
Yeah.
The lawnmower is even worse than the helicopter, right? The helicopter's watching over, the lawnmower is paving the way. Um, but one of the anecdotes I like is, back to golf. Like, if you can be the caddy, like, carries the clubs, opens up the proper doors, gives the kid the opportunities that they deserve, pays attention, sees what they're interested in and passionate about, and gives them unconditional love and support and all that stuff without interfering and try to orchestrate one's future. That would be, I think, a better way to go than this heavy breathing approach where your self-esteem is directly intertwined with what's going on with your kids' lives, and that can really mess things up in every direction. So getting over yourself as a parent while doing the absolute best job that you can, and both things are very possible. Same with in any career example where, hey, it's nice to get the boss's approval, but the reason that you're working so hard on the presentation is because you believe in the subject matter and you want to do
Yeah.
your very best work. And as soon as you hit send, you're so proud of yourself, and that's all that matters. And if someone writes back, "What is this piece of crap?" I can't believe how bad this is. That's okay. It's not going to ruin your day. You're just going to, like, use that as information gathering and try to be better next time. And it's easier said than done, of course, because everyone's walking around with some fragility and on some eggshells, and the same idea here applies to relationship, where you give your very best effort, and you can't be subject to the whims. It's not about you. If that's a good example to throw in here.
I like that. How did you meet Mark's sessions? Like, how did you guys come together and decide, I think we're going to do some big things and make magic?
Well, we're both old time triathletes. And when I was on the pro circuit, Mark was actually my coach for a lot of that time. And especially with my best performances, he was a huge part of that. And so that was back in Los Angeles in the 80s. Mark's older than I, so his career was over by the time he was coaching and helping out the other athletes that were based down in Los Angeles at that time. And then, we started writing books together back in 2008. Now it's been quite a long run where we've
Yeah.
been working on books in the ancestral health field, and also publishing works of other authors, and doing events and retreats. And now he has a new minimalist five-toe shoe company called Paluva that just launched in 2023. So we're working hard to try to promote this barefoot inspired lifestyle and footwear experience, because our feet have been destroyed by the routine use of shoes throughout our life. So we have atrophy and weakness and dysfunction, and things that we can regain if we try to gracefully transition back to a more barefoot style lifestyle. So that means walking around barefoot as much as possible in the house, and then when you're out and about, when you can get a minimalist shoe. The category is so popular these days, so it's great that people are jumping on board and realizing that you don't need this huge padded shoe in order to have a comfortable walk down the street or a trip to the gym. And it's been exciting to get onto this new project, and everything's all blended together gracefully with this ancestral inspired lifestyle.
I like that. I mean, I agree with it too. You just think about all the nerve endings ending in your feet. So if you're not stimulating those, and I'm just imagining, all right, if these nerve endings come up through my body and go back to my brain, what am I missing out to sensory based wise that
Mm,
I could enjoy? But that's me. Not everybody
yeah.
thinks that way, but I like this. So is this shoe going to be no padding or very minimal Because there've been other shoes come out where they've had, like they look like feet
Yeah,
socks.
yeah. I mean, most people are familiar with the original five-toe shoe, which was like like a
Yep.
sock with some rubber on the bottom, and they've been very popular for many years. What we did at Paluva was we try to make a shoe that's functional for more people doing more things, so that they'll actually wear them. That they look good and have some fashion, tasteful fashion aspects too. So this shoe has a sufficient amount of padding so that you can walk on hard, natural, man-made, modern surfaces. Because some of this ancestral stuff, it can get carried away with the people living out off the grid, and they don't have any food that's wrapped or in a box, so that means they can't even have eggs. I guess I don't know, but when you're talking about shoes, we want something that's going to be easy to adapt to for someone who's spent years and decades in shoes. So we kind of did the best of both worlds, where we have the five-toe functionality, which is the most important aspect of having a barefoot style or barefoot inspired experience. Some padding so that you can walk on indoor or outdoor sidewalks without getting your feet too sore. And you don't want to have like a setback when you make this commitment to try to get more barefoot inspired. So you want to have a comfortable experience, and then gracefully adapt where you can do more and more things wearing a barefoot style shoe. And the other major aspects of of a minimalist shoe are that it doesn't have an elevated heel. It's called zero drop. So your heel and
Mm-hmm.
your toe are at the same level, just like if you're barefoot. Because when you have a nice, a big fat cushioned heel, like most all running shoes, you're throwing off your posture. You're throwing off the function of your Achilles tendon. You're going to make it weakened, atrophied. It's actually going to increase impact trauma in comparison to wearing a shoe that has no heel elevation. So it's basically been a big, huge scam by the running shoe industry for decades to create these huge pillow cushion shoes in the name of improving your comfortable ride and reducing injuries. And what's really interesting, if you look at the science about running shoes, there's never been a single study to prove that wearing elevated cushion running shoes prevents injuries, nor does it lessen impact trauma. And there's a researcher at Harvard named Daniel Lieberman. He's the author of the book Exercise, one of the highest regarded barefoot locomotion experts in the world. And he has proven in his laboratory that the impact when you run barefoot is less than when you run in a popular elevated cushion shoe, because the body can gracefully absorb impact when our nerve endings and our proprioception is dialed in, such that when we land on the ground, we learn to land in the most graceful manner, just like a deer, because we have to absorb the impact, because we're not wearing an elevated cushion shoe that dampens the impact, but it dampens our sensory awareness of what that impact feels like. So the reason that these nice cushion shoes feel comfortable is because you can't sense the impact trauma due to the cushion of the shoe. If you follow me, it's kind of strange to think,
That's really
but
interesting.
yeah. And like we have, we'll have a clinic where people will remove their shoes and be instructed to run down, of course, a nice smooth stretch of pavement, but run on hard pavement. Or indoors, you run up and down the hardwood floor in a basketball gym in bare feet. And what anyone, even someone with lousy running form, who's not a real runner and is just trying to get out there, what they will notice immediately is they exhibit perfect, beautiful running form and minimize their impact trauma, because you can't run down the street with crappy heel striking form, or it'll be incredibly jarring and painful after one or two strides. So what happens is you turn into a big cat that runs down with that midfoot landing, graceful snapping of the Achilles tendon to reach the ground, and then spring back off the ground using that it's called elastic energy or rotational kinetic energy to propel yourself forward. So you instantly change from a plodder, which is only enabled by the elevated cushion shoe, into a graceful runner just by getting rid of the cushion. Now, should you go off and run your next 10K or your next half marathon barefoot because the research from Harvard reveals that impact trauma is lessened? Of course not, because we're not adapted to it, because we spent our whole lives putting our feet basically in casts. So the goal here is to start walking and doing low impact activities barefoot or in the most barefoot inspired shoe you can find, things that don't strain or stress you the next day. If you wake up with a stiff arch or stiff calf muscles, you know that you overdid it a tad and you want to dial it back. But that is the goal to make this important barefoot transition in life.
You know, you also talk about cold plunge, and it's becoming more popular. I would say in the more recent year, you see all these cold plunge tubs, and all the influencers are talking about it. You're seeing on social media, but you've been doing it for years. You have been
Yeah,
doing it for years.
I saw this as an emerging trend back in I think it was 2016. I was visiting my friend and he had an ice machine in his master bathroom. I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, I'm doing cold plunging." I'm like, "Wow, that's cool." And yeah, the practice, the health practice, has taken off amazingly in recent years, and I think one of the best benefits for me is just the developing the psychological resilience to where going in and having a plunge is no big deal, and it's not something that I have to psych up for, or I'm dreading it, but I'm going to do it because I want to be a tough guy and I want to keep my streak of 27 days in a row. All that stuff is something that maybe people are going to work through in the beginning, but when you can kind of build these into your general everyday life and absorb the highly regarded hormonal benefits from getting that quick, exhilarating plunge into cold water. And it doesn't take long, by the way. The most prominent research cited from Finland is that a 20-second immersion into 40-degree Fahrenheit water can generate a 200 to 300% boost in norepinephrine and dopamine for up to an hour after this short plunge. And anyone can relate who's gone and done, jumping in the mountain lake and then right back into the jacuzzi tub when you're on vacation, or anytime that you've jumped into cold water, you jump out and you scream, and it's like, oh my God, that was freezing cold. But you're alert and energized
You are.
instantly as soon as you get out. So that is kind of one of the highly touted benefits of a cold practice is, it's a great natural way to wake up or increase alertness, and also to develop that psychological resilience. I also use my plunge tub for recovery. So after I'm doing a hot weather workout or a really challenging sprint workout, I'll go in there and I'll put my legs in for, a longer period of time than if I'm doing an actual therapeutic cold plunge where I go full body, including immersing my head at first. So there's all kinds of different practical uses for it. I know there's a lot of talk about how it can help you reduce excess body fat. And there's, research talking about brown fat activation and all these cute things. Some of this stuff, when we get too far off into the biohacking realm, I think we're forgetting sort of the nuts and bolts. And the more important reason, I think, is psychological resilience, and then a quick, invigorating way to boost your energy. When it comes to trying to drop excess body fat, I would actually rather have you take a left turn and then a couple zigzags back to getting that junk out of your pantry and your refrigerator before we talk about how cold plunge can leverage brown fat activation to increase fat metabolism. And I've done a lot of research on this. I have a course on my website called Take the Cold Plunge, and it takes you
Yeah.
through every single step of how to get adapted to starting out just doing this with a cold shower for 30 seconds, like the basic start. Then maybe you want to invest in a fancy tub or learn how to do it in, a natural environment. I love plunging in Lake Tahoe because it's just a nature experience as well. So all that said, mainly it's something that you can do that doesn't have to be torture. It doesn't have to be something to suffer through or be negative
Yeah.
about. It's just something that you can, try and adapt to over time, so it's not too daunting.
You know, a few things I heard within that too is brain health is so important. So if you're creating these natural ways for your brain to be calm, to increase your endorphins, your dopamine, it sounds like to me taking care of your brain first feeds into everything else you're doing and creates these pathways for you to have natural body fat loss, lowered anxiety, more energy. And with that being said, where do you feel like the next trend in health and wellness is headed that you can see from your perspective?
Oh my gosh. Um, I'm hoping, I'm hoping the next trend is toward simplification.
Mm.
Because you go to a trade show and you walk the aisles and see all this high tech stuff, and so much of it is really cool. And like I said, I live and breathe this stuff. I love my Mito red light panels. I use them all the time, and I think they really do help with healing. They also help with alertness first thing in the morning. It's also a way to counteract the lack of sunlight that we get throughout our daily life. But this is not sort of speculation. This is one of the most research areas of emerging health. And there's something like 2,000 studies showing that red light therapy of a certain wavelength actually does help improve mitochondrial function. So that's become a hot, popular thing, which is great. And people are, investing in their health like never before. It's really awesome. But I'm more concerned right now about the people who are a little bit left behind or left on the sideline due to complexity or intimidation. And I'm going to point my finger straight at the fitness industry in general, because by and large, the vast majority of popular mainstream fitness programming is too stressful for the average participant. So we have CrossFit, for example. I hate to pick on you guys. I know it's very popular, and the people that are deep into it, it's been life-changing and wonderful. And I love all their philosophy about building a broad range of fitness. But in a lot of cases, we also know it's no secret that there's a huge injury and attrition rate because of some of the things they're asking the average person to come in and do off the street. Someone that has a desk job or hasn't been on the sports team since high school days, and some numbers have counted up on the calendar, and then they're asked to go in and do Olympic lifts while their body is in a fatigue state from 37 minutes of previous exercise. So I think we can make fitness more user friendly and integrate it more into general everyday life. And unfortunately, I don't have a product to pitch that I can,
No product? Oh my goodness,
like,
that's it.
hey,
Podcast over.
it's Brad's Rush Up the Stairs program, and it's going to be a sensation. It's going to be the next CrossFit. Well, that's what I'd like to see, is people just embracing fitness as something you can do anytime, any place. And my wife makes fun of me when we're at the airplane gate, because I usually hit the deck and I'll do some leg mobility swings and some core exercises because we're just sitting there waiting for the plane. And it's like, yeah, I do look super goofy if you were to walk by and see me in an airport. And the question I ask is like, why am I the only one out of the
Why are you the
178
only one?
people that are going to
Right?
board this flight and we're sitting around? So that's what I want to see as the next trend. Is when I go through an airport, I want to see 20 to 40 people doing mini bands, monster walks up and down the aisles, and all the weird stuff that I do.
You're not the only one. I'm with you there. And my travel partner, when we're at the airport, I said, I'm going to go walk on the walking thing where people get on that, and I'm going to walk the other way. And he's like, well, you'll
Oh
get
yeah,
in the way. And I'm like, oh no, we'll be fine. He's,
yeah, love
I
it.
agree with you
Yeah.
though. Get more in. And then the nutrition in the airports, like, don't be afraid to bring your own food. Don't be afraid to bring your own snacks. I mean, your health and longevity is in your hands. So, with that being said, do you feel like AI handicaps us a little bit, or do you feel like AI is going to be a really powerful tool for us to create some of these things for us? Like, what's your thought there?
I have very little thought. It's not part of my life. I know I need to step up and figure this out. And especially as a writer and cranking away on these books, I'm still wondering what role the technology is going to play. And it's hard for me to imagine someone replacing AI replacing my job in particular to put together a book. But maybe I'll be blindsided and someone will copy my book in 4 minutes. I know there was a report on Amazon that they had to establish a limit to the number of books a publisher can publish per day.
Oh,
Previously, not a
wow.
big problem because it takes about 6 months to a year to get a book together and publish it. But people were publishing like 38 romance novels every day, and selling them on Kindle for $1 because you can just snap your fingers and generate
Get it
a
done.
whole story. So that's pretty funny, and we'll see where that all takes us. But if you think about it in terms of like human health and fitness, um, you know and all these apps and technologies that's coming through, if we're sitting staring at a screen, we're not contributing to our fitness. So I'm all in favor of like this low tech approach where fitness does not have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be strenuous or exhausting, which is my problem with most of the fitness industry. And it just can be, sort of, if you go to like the examples of longevity pockets around the globe, they walk around and herd their sheep for many miles a day, or other such examples where it's just sort of integrated. And we have a chance to do that now because everything's so smart and efficient. We're not working on the farm anymore, but we certainly have time to get a home gym environment together for less than $200 and spend 5 minutes per hour there as we take a break from our screen and give our brain a break to rest. We can pull the stretch tubing and get a really good workout like never before.
I agree. When we were emailing back and forth too, you had done some work with ketones in general, and I have started to see those be a lot more popular in supplementation. Now, I don't believe anything can replace good nutrition, but we're talking about high intensity. We're talking about the brain. And I'm just like, I wonder if the awareness around this is not just a metabolic pathway anymore, but people are starting to understand where that is. Because you brought up brain health, and, we've got mental health. And I think by replacing AI with so many of the things. I mean, how long does it sit for you to take and critically think about your book and to actually use your brain processes? I think it's a great tool, just like anything, but can you actually ever replace what your brain does for you in that that creative, emotional intelligence part? I don't think so. I just think it's a great tool that can maybe simplify a few presentations, you
Mm.
know? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know. It'll
yeah,
be interesting to watch it.
yeah, for sure.
Well, I appreciate you being on here. And you guys can find him at bradkearns.com. All of his amazing resources are there. I highly recommend you hop on there and take a read, and then check out his courses. Start to discover all the things that could really enhance your life, and, see the example he said about evolving. And look forward to hearing about your next book that you have coming out that you said is, what is it, a few months almost done?
Yeah, it'll be released late 2024, early 25 timeframe. It's going to be called Born to Walk. So maybe
Mm,
we'll get back and talk about that next time if you're interested, because we got
I
a
would
lot to
love
say.
it.
Yeah, we talked
I
a
would
little bit
love it.
about the basic notion in there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brad.
Thanks a lot, Bonnie. Great show. We covered a lot, and hope it was useful. And I appreciate what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please share it and help us keep the conversation going. We can't grow without you. So, thank you in advance for your support of Power of Perseverance.